Welcome, Cristal. Thank you so much for joining us. We are building this new podcast, and you are now our third guest. And the idea behind it is to talk about building, and we call it right now Still Building. The idea behind that is kind of how are things being created, and what are the struggles that go along with it. We hear a lot of entrepreneurs talk about all the amazing successes that they've had when they look back, and they can talk about all the positive pieces, but rarely do you get them in the moment and you hear about the struggles. So thank you for joining us. Super excited. You honestly are, I'm hugely inspired by you. You have such a long experience with San Antonio and everything that we do, and I'm honored to be having you here, number one, and number two, I can't wait for the audience to hear about your story. So
thank you. Thank you for having me.
I guess I'm just going to jump right in. I had the opportunity of hearing a little bit of your story during one of our San Antonio Startup Week events, not this last year, but the year before that, and I was amazed, just simply amazed. But would you help kind of set the stage for the audience and help us understand why you are as interested in entrepreneurship as you are, kind of starting back from when you were a kid and kind of what led you down this journey?
So I never really saw myself as an entrepreneur growing up. I didn't even really know the word entrepreneur, know what entrepreneurship was. But I did see my dad, and my dad was an immigrant. He came from Mexico, had holes in his shoes, came here, speaking no English, had to create his own life, work really hard. And what I learned from him was what I call this immigrant mindset, which is also the entrepreneurial mindset. So I saw him start this summer camp called the Amigos Summer Camp. And, he had me helping him screen print shirts, signing up kids, talking to parents, getting his campers. And that experience always stuck with me. And I'm like, wow, my dad created that from scratch. And so I think that really got me comfortable. It exposed me to this idea of starting something new.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really allowed me to start VentureLab. But I think the real start with VentureLab was my own experiences growing up, always taking things apart, wanting to know how things worked, being curious. Like, I still remember taking apart my parents' old rotary telephone from the 1980s? The mustard yellow telephone that a lot of kids nowadays don't.
They have no idea.
They have no idea.
Yeah.
So my son even, we had one and we asked him to, do a phone call, and then he dialed, and he's like, and then he picked up the thing, and he's like, it's not working. And we had to explain to him, no, you have to pick up the phone first and then dial the numbers. But it was really just that curiosity. And then going into engineering, where I think there were only 5 girls in the mechanical engineering at UT, and it was 500 guys. And then, starting a tech company in grad school and doing investor pitches in New York and California, and then not seeing, women CEOs, not seeing women in tech, not seeing women investors anywhere, or Hispanic to be accurate. And that really led me to come to San Antonio, started the Entrepreneurship Center at Trinity, where I was like, I am going to get more girls and people of color into entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. But really noticed again, the girls in my classes were not raising their hand. Even if they knew the right answer, they were just too afraid to speak up. They would come to me saying they were getting C's, in their classes, and they were going to drop out. Whereas a lot of the guys in the class were just like, it's a C, it's okay, I can do it.
Yeah.
So they had really kind of lost this confidence and mindset. So I started teaching my kids at the time, who were, I think, 3 and 4.
Oh, wow.
So 2 girls and 2 boys. But the teachers were coming up to me and saying, wow, your girls are raising their hands in class. They're coming up with these creative ideas, and they're selling things in the playground.
So you're kind of already changing that what you were experiencing at Trinity, right? Yeah.
So I saw this, and I was teaching them the exact same concepts, just kind of changing the language so a 4-year-old can understand. Mm-hmm. And seeing the teachers saying, we need more of this. So I'm trying to remember what year this was. I guess maybe 2012, 2013.
Okay.
Leaving Trinity and coming to geekdom before it was even geekdom. There was no furniture in the building. It was the old Frost Bank, geekdom.
Yeah, at the Weston Center, 11th floor, correct?
Yeah, yes, yeah. Yes. So, having summer camps there for girls only to really try and build their confidence. And then we got parents saying, wait, we need boys here too. So kind of opening it up to co-ed. And then once again, teachers from across San Antonio saying, we need this in our schools. And so it was really kind of that background and that founding story and, Trinity and geekdom and all of this really coming together to build this entrepreneurial ecosystem that I think San Antonio really needed.
Well, and I want to take a moment there and kind of drill down to the role that I think you played for that, based on not only my own experiences when I joined here at Geekdom in 2017 and hearing about the legacy that we have had, and a lot of those tie back to you and the work that you did. So thinking about when you were building the entrepreneurship program at Trinity, you brought a program here called 3-Day Startup.
Yes, yep.
Which was profound for the group that we have here at Geekdom, and still you find the remnants of that program and its iteration finding its way through our programming as it exists today. So that's huge shout out. But then also the sheer fact that you jumped in. We have such a strong relationship with Trinity still to this day because of the work that you did. But then for you to build the nonprofit VentureLab here and to help those students, and now for us to be sitting and talking about it and hearing about the new iterations too. Huge shout out. But before we get into that, I do want to spend a little bit more time around what led you to this. And you mentioned kind of ripping things apart as a kid and kind of getting into STEM and engineering. And when I think about engineering, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think about somebody who's presented a problem and comes up with a solution for it.
Yeah.
No matter what it takes, iterations upon iterations. And you saw, I think, this problem, it sounds like, around not seeing enough women represented in that field. Has that changed? And if so, what do you think one of the big changes or things that have unlocked that change have been?
All right. Well, I'm going to start by kind of answering the how I got into, starting VentureLab. I think one of the big things for me was when I was doing my PhD at UT. I was developing size and shape-specific nanoparticles for lung cancer tumor tissue.
Wow.
And I had a mentor who really encouraged me to start this business. And as an engineer, as a researcher, a lot of times you're just looking at that technology. You're like, wow, this is a great technology. I'm helping cells, or I'm developing a new drug or chemical or protein. But a lot of times researchers and engineers don't think about the commercialization aspect.
Yeah.
How does this technology provide value to our society? And I really started to think about that. I'm like, look at all this amazing stuff that is going on at universities. How do we apply this research to help society? So I started to learn that in grad school with the help of a mentor and a female mentor who had started a tech company in Austin. She really pushed me to start this nanotechnology company. And that really gave me the confidence that when I came to San Antonio, I saw this need. I did not see a lot of women in tech. I didn't see a lot of women CEOs, a lot of women leaders. So I was like, you know what? I learned this process during my PhD. I learned how to find a problem, find an opportunity, test it out, find a solution, and then go out and talk to people and get them to listen to me and speak persuasively. So that process that I learned in grad school, when I came to San Antonio, I was like, this is a problem that I want to solve. It can really benefit San Antonio, and went through those same steps. It's really the scientific methodology, kind of like you were saying.
Yeah.
Like problem, testing different solutions. If they don't work, you go back and say, what can I change and alter that I didn't do before, until you come up with some sort of solution. And like entrepreneurship, right? You don't know which one's right or wrong. There's a lot of gray area. You have to be okay with not knowing and going out and talking to people that do know, finding people smarter than yourself. So that really is what helped me try to find a solution for this. And I will say, I think we definitely have moved the needle. I actually think Rackspace did a great job during this time that I was doing a lot of the work here in San Antonio with Geekdom and with Trinity, of really focusing on bringing women leaders onto the board at Rackspace, and also really raising up women leaders. So I had done an interview actually with Graham Weston back then, talking about kind of this, one of the problems, like why weren't there as many women leaders or women board leaders? And one of the things that he brought up was something called the trailing spouse syndrome.
I don't know what that is. Would you mind sharing a little bit more?
Yeah, so a lot of times when a man gets a job, or either he has to move or take a higher position, the wife will follow.
We see this a lot actually in the military. I think that is where you're going. Like the spouses of the people who are in the military end up going every 2 years to a new location, and whether or not they had a job at the previous location, sometimes it didn't come over. But you also find them a lot in entrepreneurship. Sorry to interject, but that resonated with me a lot.
I think it resonates across industries and fields. And what he noticed is that when it was a woman, when she had the opportunity to take a higher level position, if it required, maybe more hours or not as much time with the kids, or they had to move locations, that the male spouse would not trail. So that gave the woman a lot harder decision. It's like, I can take this job and further my career, or I might, lose my spouse.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that he actually called out a while back. I don't know if that's gotten better. I think I have seen it improve, but probably not as much as I would like it to improve. Looking at the numbers of, women in engineering programs or STEM programs in the university, I mean, they've improved maybe 10, 15%. I do think you see a lot more women in leadership positions, but still at those higher rungs, we just don't have enough. And I think one of those stats that I've shared before is that there are more male CEOs named John in Fortune 500 companies than all
really?
Women CEOs combined.
That's it's sad to hear, but I don't want to get too hung up on that, because I do think that there is progress being made, but that is so sad to hear that there's more CEOs named John than there are women in the whole entire Fortune 500. Is that what that was?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. I will say, going back to one point that you made though, through my experience of kind of seeing what has happened with Rackspace after the fact, and I don't mean that as in they're still around, they still exist, but from that generation of Rackspace that was really there at the beginning and kind of building to about they were sold to Apollo in 2016, I have experienced so many women leaders that have found their way into other positions across our ecosystem. One of my board chairs, Kat Dizon, one of my other board members, Deborah Carter. There's so many more that I could go on with, but it is amazing to see that effect one company can have. And it sounds like that was something that you kind of helped, or at least Graham was able to point out, and you guys were able to work on that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's something that I really pushed. So when VentureLab came to Geekdom, when it had just been the founding days, we were really the only woman-led company at Geekdom. So that was really a big thing that I was pushing on people. Like, let's get more women-led companies into San Antonio, into Geekdom, into the whole infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I remember I don't remember what it's called now, but the Geekdom Fund.
Yeah.
So I was the first female member, and then I remember we brought on Gabby Niederauer.
Yeah, I remember Gabby. Yeah.
And, just really trying to be the one in the room saying we need to really go out and seek these women leaders. Because if we don't, a lot of times we're hiring and looking for people that are like us, and we don't necessarily realize that we may be not looking outside the box. So I think really pushing that, and even with VentureLab, trying to grow these girls at age 5 or 6 and show them that they can create something, they can create a product, a service, a company, they can go out and speak and have adults listen to them and take their ideas seriously. So my goal with that, with starting so young at VentureLab, is that we can hopefully rewire their brains, and their brains are so neuroplastic right now that I think you can create these new neural pathways, so that when they get to middle school, when a lot of girls end up dropping out of STEM or stop speaking up, that maybe I can surpass that hump and grow more girl leaders that feel more confident in themselves.
I love that. And one thought that I had as you were going through that explanation, you had mentioned you started a company working with nanoparticles, if I remember correctly. But then after doing that, now you started to tackle women in STEM and leadership and also in entrepreneurship. And I think about both of those things sounding very complex. Which one has been harder for you to try to solve? Has it been the nanoparticles, or has it been this kind of new work, the VentureLab work?
I feel like they're both really complex.
Yeah.
I will say with a nanotechnology company back, God, I don't remember if that was 2000, maybe 2003. Surprisingly enough, we haven't come that far with nanotechnology, especially on drug delivery and cancer therapy. I mean, we still don't. The reason I started that was because I saw how people with cancer, the chemotherapeutic drugs basically attack all the cells in the body.
Yeah.
And my goal
They're not
was
specific enough, right?
Yeah. So my goal was specifically to target certain regions. And I will say with that company at the time, I had two kids, very young kids at the time, basically single mom, and trying to do everything on that. So for me in particular with that one, I think the challenge was being that single mom of 2, trying to push this research, trying to push the company, and just really not having the bandwidth. So that was a big challenge for me at that age. And I know there are a lot of women, who are young moms, who are younger, who are also trying to start tech companies. And I will say that is a huge challenge. So, if you do get to that point where, for me, it was a chicken and egg thing. The investors wanted to see more animal studies. But in order to get more animal studies, I needed to raise more research funding. So it's one of those things where I was like, I actually have to prioritize my kids and being home. So I did not move forward with that. The patent is still there if someone wants to take it over and restart it. But that was a big challenge.
Yeah.
And I'm still surprised at how far. 2003, that was over 23 years ago.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I'm just like, I'm surprised that it hasn't gone farther.
With that, let's talk about how that got started. And it sounds like, based on what you were explaining with something your dad created, you started with a summer camp. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I had that exposure early on. I was like, you know what? I saw my dad start a summer camp. Well, of course I could start a summer camp.
Start there.
I had never done it before. No idea what I was doing, but I was like, okay, I remember my dad doing this. I remember him signing up kids, going to schools, talking to them, and I felt comfortable because I had that early exposure. I was probably 7 when he did that.
Wow.
And I think that's why I think it's so important that we expose kids really early on, because that will stick with them. Mm-hmm. So starting out with that summer camp and then, taking it from there to realizing, parents want boys too, and schools want this in their curriculum. The hard thing, I think, with VentureLab and our entrepreneurship curriculum, especially early on, and even now, is that entrepreneurship is considered an elective.
Yeah. It's not a part of the core curriculum.
I think it needs to be core curriculum, especially, we can go into AI and all that now. Like, we need entrepreneurship.
Agreed.
It needs to be mandatory in schools. But what we noticed is in schools, with testing, with the core classes, whenever that testing time came around, it's like, oh, entrepreneurship, off to the side.
It's the quickest thing for them to sacrifice, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And so that was really hard because students didn't finish the full curriculum, and then it just kind of, it got dropped. So that really led us to putting a lot of our curriculum online for free in bite-sized chunks. So this was actually Pat Condon's idea, is like kind of the freemium model. Like, let's find, ambassadors or lighthouse people from around the world who are going to be saying, look, I get entrepreneurship. I think it's important. I'm going to start using this. Mm-hmm. So we did that, I want to say 2016 maybe.
Okay.
We put it online in bite-sized chunks for free and started to find all these people around the world being like, wow, this is amazing. We need this. And from there, we were able to start, packaging up the curriculum into forms that we could either sell or subsidize, because I will say, as an entrepreneurial nonprofit, we want to be entrepreneurial. We want to have that earned income as well as, donor income. I think that's really important, and a lot of nonprofits don't always think that way.
We experienced that. We actually have a program specifically to help nonprofits understand that it's not that typical just grant and proposals. You can find other ways of bringing in revenue, and you need to treat it more like a business than you do just a nonprofit that's supposed to be getting donations.
Yeah. So I will say, constantly innovating, finding those new revenue streams was really important for us. From there, we've gone more into the after-school space because we realized you don't need standards for that.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of the underserved youth in these after-school spaces that need really good, robust programming. And we're like, well, at least here, our curriculum won't be dropped. This is something that's needed.
Yeah.
And then from after school, we've been like, how do we have an even bigger impact? And that's when we got into the train the educator.
Oh, okay.
So educators are with these students year round. For 25 years at a time. So if we can train these educators to become entrepreneurial themselves, so we teach them the entrepreneurial mindsets and how to teach the curriculum, and then they go on and teach their students.
I love that method too, because it is something that will find its way into many different areas, not just one particular curriculum/class. It is going to find its way in everything that they do throughout their typical day with the students. So I like that approach. How long have you guys been doing that in particular?
Gosh, the train the trainer model, we've been doing that for a while. I don't recall, probably since 2000. I feel like COVID's a time sink. I don't remember. We started maybe pre-COVID.
Okay.
So I don't even remember how many years that is, maybe 6, 7 years. I don't know.
But I think one of the things that I'm understanding with what you've done with Venture Labs, not only have you been doing this work for some time, but it has seen different iterations of success along the way. Not only starting with summer camp and then shifting to curriculum for schools and after school, and now with the train the trainer piece of that, you've seen these different pathways to bringing the entrepreneurship to students at really young ages. What challenges did you experience along that journey that you still see as relevant today, and what's leading towards what you're working on now with VentureLab Ignite?
I think one of the big things is, of course, always listening to your customer.
Yes.
And looking at what the trends are. So for us, starting with the camps, the big thing was, am I having enough impact? How do I reach more students? So the idea was, let's go into schools. And with the schools, we didn't realize, you never know what you're doing. You're always testing new ideas out. We didn't realize, you need TEKS alignment. You need to train the educators in the schools, but there's a lot of teacher turnover. There's testing.
Yep.
So you have to learn the hard way through multiple iterations and sometimes years that that's not the right path. So being able to pivot again and say, okay, what's maybe some lower hanging fruit? Where can we enter the market? And I think that's where it's constant risk taking. So, putting the curriculum online for free and starting to go into the after school market. I think still our biggest issue right now is the teacher time, I'd say.
What capacity they have is what you're
yes,
saying. Right
so teachers already spend so much. They don't spend just 40 hours a week at school. They spend 80 hours. They're there beforehand prepping. They're creating the curriculum. They're buying their own supplies for their students. They are driving students places. They are much more than teachers.
Yeah.
And they don't get paid well.
As we know, unfortunately.
So they need something that is bite-sized, very structured out, like you do X, Y, and Z. Here's the kit. Here is how you do it. So we actually moved to creating these kits that had everything in a box, as well as instructions for the teacher and for the students. And just finding ways to make it easier for students and teachers to get access to the entrepreneurial education, but also implement it.
Gotcha. And so really just making it as bite-sized as possible and to get it into them. And that is a piece of this VentureLab Ignite, or is that going to be shifting a little bit more?
So VentureLab Ignite is once again another shift. So we went really broad, and we have this amazing impact. we're serving over 1.2 million students,
Wow.
in 150 countries, all 50 states. So those are our great vanity metrics.
But those are not anything to shake a stick at.
Yes.
1.2 million students is huge.
Yeah.
So congratulations, and that's
Thanks.
been 13 years in the making since
Yeah.
you guys started.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Congrats.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. So we've gone wide, and I feel like now it's time to go deep. I was really missing my San Antonio roots, and coming back here, spending more time in San Antonio and noticing, oh gosh, there is still a need for this. There are so many great programs out there that I've found though. So there's something called SUSO, Speak Up and Speak Out, which is a really great program where kids are doing kind of, I want to say, advocacy work. And I don't think they realize that what they're doing is entrepreneurship. They're coming up with a problem, doing market research, coming up with solutions, making prototypes and pitching it. And I saw that and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
There's another one, I think it's called the SA Smart Challenge through SAMSAT.
Yes.
Clint Zintgraft. So I met with him just recently, and I'm like, San Antonio has all these amazing things. How do we also tie that in together? And, working with Geekdom, working with the universities like UTSA and I think it's the NAGEM
Center for Business
Center for Entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Working with Trinity. And I just saw another convergence. This is the time where we need to bring all these programs together and have something that ties them together. So VentureLab Ignite is kind of our going deep in San Antonio to create this lighthouse and then spread to other regions as well.
And what does that look like in action?
Yeah, so VentureLab Ignite, we're going to be doing really short form, high energy entrepreneurial experiences for high school and hopefully going into middle school, where it kind of takes from my 3-day startup, really high intensity over 3 days. You come in with an idea, you work with a whole group of mentors who help you with your pitch, with ideation, with team formation, thinking about your business model, creating a prototype, and then pitching. So I wanted to do this sort of format for kids. And we actually have our first event coming up March 20th and 21st.
Oh, really?
With Trinity.
Yeah, Trinity.
So bringing high school kids from across San Antonio, no charge at all, but we're going to have mentors from across the San Antonio community and Geekdom as well, so I'm excited about that. But teaching these kids how to take their ideas and turn them into something even more tangible, share that with mentors, and then pitch that. And the idea is for them to really just quickly learn that process so that they can take it and do they can do more in-depth programming. But this is really to inspire them.
Yeah.
Inspire them with, these community mentors who are in different fields. Maybe they'll find out they want to go into marketing, or they're really interested in AI, or they're really interested in, I don't know, whatever field a mentor is there. So exposing them to those career pathways, and then also exposing them to the universities. Maybe some of them had not thought about Trinity for themselves.
Yeah.
So the idea is just that inspiration, teaching them that really quick process, exposing them to these mentors, and getting them ready, sparking them for that next thing, whether it's entrepreneurship or whatever it might be.
Well, I think the thing that I love about your journey, but also what it is that you're doing specifically with VentureLab, is this understanding that entrepreneurship is a methodology that can unlock so many other things in your life, with how you approach different problems. That to me is very powerful, and it's something that we see through the work that we do every day. But I love that you're bringing it to kids at such a young age, and that is powerful. And I also love, with this Ignite approach, the connection with the universities, because I feel like as we look at San Antonio and the aspirations that we have for the city for the future, we really want to be able to have this generational growth.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what this program and what you're doing is addressing. And I love that. And I think it's grounded in entrepreneurship, which means the world to me, and I think opens up the possibilities. And I love that has the piece of entrepreneurship as well. So even if they do end up becoming a professional within a corporation, they still have that ability to lead a new initiative because of that experience. So,
and I will say too, even if they go into, if they become an artist, right? They have to market their own art. If they go into medical and have their own practice, if they become a theater set designer. It's like you need all of that creativity and that whole, you're going to always need to practice that. And this goes back to one of my big things about AI. And I know this may be taking us off topic.
Oh, please, I love it.
But I just feel like with the advent of AI and how fast it's changing, right now I have kids that are juniors in high school and some in college. I'm seeing a lot of, these entry-level jobs that college kids would have potentially had not being there.
Yeah.
So my question is now, how do we prepare these kids now at an earlier age to be ready for that uncertainty and to lead and to create? So my thing right now is I want kids to be builders, not just bystanders. I want them to not just have AI tools run them, but them, create these ideas. Because AI is great, right? But it's not, I don't believe it's going to be conscious. I don't know. Maybe it will be. But it just looks at patterns and it creates these things. And sometimes it's a little got a little, self-bias in there.
Yeah.
But kids really need to know and be comfortable with using these tools to help create ideas.
Yeah.
Like AI is not going to create ideas for us. It's the humans that are. So how do we teach kids to create these ideas and use AI to help them? Because AI is going to be a great democratizer of entrepreneurship. I mean, you're
already seeing it.
We're seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, we were. I was talking about it this morning. Using the tools that exist today, you can validate ideas so much quicker than you could have 5-10 years ago, and that can be a very powerful thing. But one of the pieces of this that I've seen, and you're resonating with that same thought, which is you need to grab it by the reins and you need to leverage it rather than being A, afraid of it, or B, a bystander for what it's going to do. And that to me, it really resonates with me. But additionally, I would say that another piece of that is the community that you get through programs like what you're building. And what we're trying to do is bringing those people together to understand and learn from each other and leverage that tool for the betterment of not only their own idea, but also others. So I think that's great. What other things, as you think about AI, is that going to be played out during these Ignite weekends at all?
Yes.
Okay.
So the idea is we are actually creating some curriculum right now that teach kids to use the tools of AI.
Gotcha.
Whether I know the tools will always be changing, but with Lovable, creating your own apps and websites, using Claude to help create your financial and business models. We also don't want kids to listen blindly to AI. They need to use it ethically. They still need to use critical thinking. They need to not believe everything it says, but teaching them how to use these tools in the correct way. Right? Because you don't need designers anymore. You may not need website creators. All these are things that kids can do on their own, like in a matter of hours.
Yep.
So teaching them how to do that, developing kind of this digital curriculum that students can easily digest, and helping them use that to create potential businesses more quickly.
Well, and I love that too, because it goes back to one of the points that you had made earlier in this conversation, which was showing these new pathways for the neurons to work within somebody's brain to understand that the possibilities are somewhat endless, or this is how you can get to those possibilities that you may not have thought of before.
Yeah.
And I see that with this AI usage as well, is it is teaching them how to leverage it for their own benefit and how to really eliminate barriers between where they stand today and where they're trying to go with the tool and their idea in general. So I love that.
And also one thing really quick too that I'm very cognizant of is a lot of students may not have access to technology. And so with us really focusing on underserved youth, I want to make sure that these kids who may not know as much about AI or have access to technology, that they are also learning these skills. Because if we're not bringing them up and they're not learning these skills, we're going to have an even larger digital divide than we do now. And that's going to be, there's going to be kids here starting businesses and a lot more kids not, because they don't have the understanding or the technology. So a big piece of mine is how do we make sure to decrease and make that digital divide smaller so that all kids are able to do this.
I think that's ingenious, because if you think back to the experience that I'm sure both you and I lived through, which was the advent of the internet and the growth that we've seen from that, and how much it's changed everybody's life and our ability to leverage it for good, I see AI being just as beneficial, disruptive, whatever word you want to use for it. It's going to be very dramatically different from where we stand today and where we're going. And so the quicker that you can adapt to it, the quicker you can learn about it, the better you'll be positioned for that future. And I love that you're bringing it to people from underserved communities, because ultimately that has been the groups that we've seen when the digital divide, specifically during COVID, was very noticeable. That's where the work needs to be done. As I think through that and I think about the implications of it, are there ways, obviously education on how to use it is one way, is there another way that we as a community can help get access to that for those communities? Is there relationships with the AI companies themselves to lower the barrier of entry, or anything that you're aware of?
I've been thinking about this a lot, and I know it's not exactly what VentureLab does. It's something that I think would be beneficial. It's really making sure that all these schools have the technology in the first place, because a lot of them don't have the technology and they don't have the educators to teach that how to use that technology.
Yeah.
So a big thing is even providing that technology to these schools and having an educator that can teach it. So I don't know how to solve that problem.
Training the trainer on AI, it sounds like, to a certain extent.
Yeah, but then we also need technology. So maybe it's companies that are donating this technology to the schools, especially with computers and things where they can access it, because a lot of them don't have access to it.
Yeah, it's
only going to be at the schools where they have access.
Well, and again, not to date myself too much, but even thinking about my first experiences with computers were at school, Oregon Trail, those types of things.
I loved Oregon Trail.
It was
Carmen Sandiego.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Like those were core memory moments of me and technology then that helped me be better equipped to use it today. And I think about what that could mean for AI for a kid that is, 7, 8 years old now, being able to have that tool. What's possible?
Well, I was going to say, did you ever do alpha or beta programming?
I don't think so.
Okay, that probably dates me.
Is that like coding? Is that
Yeah, it was coding, like old school coding. I did that in elementary school.
I remember doing that when I was in high school. I want to say sophomore-ish time frame. We did it, but our computers were still Apple IIe's at that point, which is, I mean, like in the 90s, it should have been something a little bit more advanced. But
I know this isn't on our topic, but I went to the SAMSAT Gala fundraiser. Actually, that was this weekend, and it was so amazing to see. They had all these old computers, the floppy disks, the really old, huge hard drives, but just to even see the trajectory of how technology has changed, it's really amazing.
Well, I know. I mean, just not to get too anecdotal, but the idea that like in our pockets right now, we have a computer that is way more powerful than what got us to the moon is crazy to me.
Yep, I always think about that.
And when you go to a place like SAMSAT and you can see the generations of technology through the evolution and see how small it gets, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I love that. When we think about where we're headed, you mentioned that you have the event coming up in Trinity at the end of the month in March, 20th through 21st, correct? You guys also are going to be at South by Southwest, correct? Can you tell me a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, so March 12th, I'm speaking at South by Southwest with the founder, Frank and Eileen. And the whole idea is about, empowering girls in STEM, but also entrepreneurship. So she and I have a very similar story. Immigrant parents, we both started out kind of in engineering, both ended up starting amazingly successful companies. And we just really want to go out and inspire other girls to do that as well. So I'm just really excited. She's starting a new foundation that's going to be focused on young girls and getting them into entrepreneurship. So it really dovetails perfectly with my passion and with what VentureLab does. So we're really excited to go out and inspire more future female entrepreneurs.
And you two are just going to be talking about that on the 12th, or
Yes.
is that where the announcement's going to be about the foundation?
That's a great question. I don't know. Well, there is a launch party this week, so the announcement may also be, for a wider audience.
Then,
but yeah, it's really just the talk is about our stories and inspiring girls.
That's great. And then, based on our other conversations, this is all leading towards a major event that we're going to be collaborating on during San Antonio Startup Week coming in October
Yes.
2nd. Friday, October 2nd, there will be a big event. Could you elaborate a little bit on what that looks like?
Yeah, and so just to go back a little bit, the idea with VentureLab Ignite is to have several events throughout the year. So several, challenges, whether it's, social impact, which it is on March 20th, or if it's medical or fashion, just really listening to the kids and seeing what they're passionate about. But having that feed into this big event at San Antonio Startup Week.
Okay.
So we will be doing some summer camps this summer, I think in partnership with either Trinity and or UTSA, the NAGEM Center. And we want the kids going through that to really learn entrepreneurship. And the ones that are passionate about pursuing those are going to come to this event at San Antonio Startup Week, where we're going to have a big summit. The kids are going to come in, do some mentor roundtables where they're talking with all the different mentors, doing some lunch and learns, and then the finalists really pitching their business ideas for a larger amount of prizes, because we do have some monetary prizes for March 20th, but we're hoping to get some sponsors and have some larger prizes. It'd be ideal if we could get some sort of, scholarship to a university. I'm still working on that. But really just having these kids from San Antonio, from all over, showcase what they've been working on throughout the year and really acknowledge all their hard work and see the amazing ideas they come up with.
That's great. And is there a place where somebody can find out about those other events along the way between March 20th and October 2nd? Your website, I would assume?
Yeah, so they can check out our website. It's at VentureLabIgnite.org. And we'll be putting up, right now we have our March 20th event, and we're going to be putting up more information about all the other events now that we're getting finalized.
That's great. Well, Cristal, thank you so very much for being here and having this conversation with us and all the work that you do for San Antonio and for young women and youth in general to get into entrepreneurship. Thank you so much.
And thank you to you and Geekdom as well for all that you do for, future entrepreneurs here in San Antonio, helping them, accomplish their dreams and, giving them access to all these mentors and other, space. And it's just, I think what you guys are doing is great.
Well, thank you. We couldn't do it without people just like yourself. So thank you so much for all the work that you do.